So, another Tuesday. You know how those go, right? Nothing particularly exciting, nothing that screams viral YouTube content from the moment your alarm blares, just Tuesday. My alarm, bless its digital heart, went off at its usual 6:30 a.m. Not because I have to be in some cubicle farm by 8, thankfully, but because the early morning on the lake is just too good to miss. I dragged myself out of bed, padded into the kitchen. Same old routine. Grind the beans, fire up the French press, let that rich aroma fill the house. It's a small ritual, but it sets the tone for the day. I grabbed my mug, still half asleep, but already feeling that familiar warmth spreading through me, and walked straight out onto the back porch. My house, bless its heart, sits right on the edge of Lake Crest Lake. Not a massive lake by any stretch, but big enough to get lost on for an afternoon. And the view? Man, the view never gets old. The sun was just starting to climb over the tree line on the far side, painting the water in those soft oranges and pinks that photographers kill for. A light mist was still clinging to the surface, and a pair of ducks were already out, paddling around, completely oblivious to the impending chaos their perfect little world was about to experience. I leaned against the railing, taking a slow sip of coffee, just soaking it all in. This is my peace. This is why I bought this place, why I dealt with the endless paperwork, the moving boxes, the surprisingly aggressive wasps that decided my garage was their new summer home. It's for mornings like this. Peaceful, serene, utterly, wonderfully normal. My gaze drifted down to my dock, where the big fish was moored. That's what I call my boat. It's a 26-foot bayliner, a pretty decent-sized cuddy cabin. Not a yacht, not by a long shot, but certainly not some tiny John boat you can throw on top of your SUV. It's got a small galley, a sleeping berth, and enough deck space for a few friends to comfortably hang out. I love that boat. Spent months researching, saving, haggling to get it. It's my escape, my therapy. Every weekend, weather permitting, I'm out there, either fishing, cruising, or just anchored in a quiet cove reading a book. It fits perfectly in the slip I had installed when I first moved in. Never had a problem, not once. I remember when I first bought the house, I made sure to check all the HOA regulations. You know, the usual stuff. Lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors, noise ordinances. They had a section on boats, naturally. Length restrictions, engine types, mooring rules. I specifically remember double-checking the maximum boat length. It was something like 30 feet, maybe 32. My 26-footer was well within the limits. I'm not one to intentionally stir the pot. I believe in following the rules, especially when it concerns something I've invested so much in. No point in inviting trouble, right? So I read the bylaws, signed on the dotted line, and for the past 4 years, it's been smooth sailing, literally and figuratively. The Lake Crest community, for the most part, is pretty chill. A mix of retirees, young families, and a few folks like me who just enjoy the quiet life away from the city grind. We have our community events, 4th of July barbecue, a Christmas lights contest, but nothing too intrusive. The HOA board meetings usually focused on trivial stuff, like the color of the new community sign or whether the geese population needed managing. Never anything serious, never anything that affected me directly. Honestly, I barely even thought about the HOA, except for paying my monthly dues, which, let's be real, felt like a low-level background hum of bureaucracy, easily ignored. After finishing my coffee, I headed back inside, showered, threw on a t-shirt and shorts. My work allows me to be pretty flexible, so I often start my day by checking emails from the couch, sometimes with my laptop on the porch. Today was no different. I fired up the computer, made a mental note to pick up some more dog food later. My retriever, Max, was giving me those sad puppy dog eyes that clearly meant his kibble supply was dwindling. A pretty typical Tuesday. A few work emails, a quick scroll through the news, nothing pressing. The sun was higher now, reflecting off the lake in dazzling flashes. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. Everything was just normal, tranquil, predictable. I had no idea that normal was about to be obliterated by a perfectly manicured, entitled tornado in a khaki vest and a permanent scowl. A tornado that believed her personal aesthetic preferences trumped actual, written-down rules and common decency. But for now, for those precious early morning hours, it was just me, my coffee, my boat, and the peaceful illusion that my biggest problem of the day would be remembering to buy dog food. Little did I know, the calm was merely the prelude. The calm before the Karen. So, picture this. It was a perfect Saturday afternoon. The kind of day where the sun hits the water just right, a gentle breeze is blowing, and you just feel grateful to be alive, you know? I was out on my dock, wiping down the hull of the Perseus. Yeah, I name my boats, don't judge. Getting her ready for an evening cruise. She's a beauty, a 30-foot cabin cruiser, and I just had her professionally detailed. Gleaming chrome, polished fiberglass, all of it. I was humming some classic rock, just really in my happy place, completely oblivious to the storm about to roll in. I heard a clearing of a throat behind me. Not a polite, excuse me kind of throat clear, but a deliberate, almost aggressive harumph. I turned around, a little startled, honestly. Standing there, on my property, mind you, was a woman I'd never seen before. Mid-50s, probably, with that severe bob haircut that just screams, "I need to speak to your manager." She was wearing a matching visor and polo shirt, some kind of corporate-looking casual wear, clutching a clipboard to her chest like it was a sacred scroll. My first thought was, did I order a delivery I forgot about? "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to be polite, even though my internal alarm bells were already faintly chiming. Her gaze wasn't on me, though. It was fixed squarely on the Perseus, and not in an admiring way. More like she was looking at a particularly offensive stain. Her lips were pursed so tight, I thought they might just disappear. "You must be the owner of this vessel," she stated, not asked. Her voice having that distinct, high-pitched, almost nasal quality you just know is going to be trouble. I straightened up, a little confused. "Yeah, that's my boat. Is there a problem?" I gestured vaguely at the gleaming hull. What could possibly be the problem? The paint job? The registration was current? She took a step closer, tapping the clipboard meaningfully. "A problem? Sir, this is a massive problem. This boat is entirely too large for this lake." She said "too large" like it was a 4-letter word, spitting out each syllable. Now that stopped me cold. "Too large?" I repeated, my brow furrowing. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a private lake, my private lake, and the Perseus is perfectly suited for it. I mean, come on, a 30-foot boat on a multi-acre private lake? It's not like I was trying to dock an aircraft carrier." She actually scoffed. Scoffed. "Private lake? Sir, I think you're mistaken. This is a community lake, governed by the Lakeview Estates Homeowners Association. And as the president of the HOA Lake Recreation Committee, I can assure you, your boat is in direct violation of our covenants regarding watercraft dimensions." She puffed out her chest a little, as if the sheer weight of her title was enough to make my boat shrink on command. I just stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. Community lake? HOA? I'd owned this entire property, lake and all, for 15 years. I bought it specifically because it was private. The confusion quickly morphed into a slow-burning annoyance. Who was this woman, and what was she even talking about? "Listen, lady," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I don't know who you are or what Lakeview Estates Homeowners Association you're talking about, but you're wrong. This is my property, entirely my property, and there's no HOA involved." My patience was already wearing thin, and we were only 2 minutes into this bizarre encounter. The idea of someone dictating what kind of boat I could have on my own property was just preposterous. My grip tightened on the polishing cloth I was holding. This was going to be a fun Saturday, all right. Okay, so the initial shock of seeing this woman, this Karen, standing there, arms crossed, practically glaring daggers at my pride and joy, my beautiful new cruiser, that shock quickly morphed into pure, unadulterated disbelief. I mean, my boat, a 28-foot cabin cruiser, perfectly legal, perfectly moored in my own private dock, attached to my private property on this private lake? What could possibly be her issue? I walked over, trying to keep my voice even, the polite neighborly thing. "Good morning," I started, a forced smile on my face. "Everything all right over here?" She didn't even budge, just narrowed her eyes, then finally she spoke. And oh boy, her voice was just as pinched and unpleasant as her expression. "Everything is decidedly not all right, young man." She said young man like it was an insult, by the way. "That thing," she gestured dismissively at my boat, "is an eyesore. And frankly, it's far too large for this lake." I blinked. An eyesore? My boat was immaculate, less than a year old. Too large? This lake is massive. We're talking hundreds of acres, plenty big for even serious water sports, let alone a cruiser. My internal monologue was already screaming, "Are you serious right now?" But I tried to maintain composure. "Ma'am, with all due respect, it's a cabin cruiser. It's well within the size limits, and it's on my private property." I gestured to the boundary markers, which she completely ignored. She scoffed, a sound so theatrical it almost made me laugh. Almost. "Size limits. There are rules, young man. We have an aesthetic standard in this community. Your monstrosity violates it. It's disruptive to the tranquil nature of our beautiful lake." She puffed out her chest, looking like she just delivered a presidential address. Now this is where the frustration really started to simmer. Aesthetic standard? What aesthetic standard? I'd read the HOA rules front to back multiple times before I even bought the house. There was absolutely nothing about boat size beyond what was safe for the lake's depth, which mine easily met. And disruptive to the tranquil nature, my boat was sitting still, tied to my dock. Was it disruptive just by existing? "Look," I said, my voice losing a little of its forced politeness. "I've checked the HOA bylaws. There's nothing in there that restricts boat size to this degree. And even if there were, my boat isn't blocking anyone's view. It's not causing any noise pollution. It's just there." She just smirked, that irritating, self-satisfied smirk that all Karens seem to perfect. "Oh, you think you're so clever, don't you? Well, I am on the HOA board, young man, and I say it's too big, and I'm quite sure the board will agree with me." She practically purred the last sentence. This was it. This was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with a concerned neighbor, but an entitled busybody who thought her opinion was law. My blood pressure started to climb. "So you're telling me you're going to use your position on the HOA board to try and enforce a non-existent rule because you personally don't like my boat?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Her eyes gleamed. "It's not about what I like, it's about maintaining the integrity and value of our community. Your boat devalues everyone's property." The sheer audacity of her statement was breathtaking. My pristine, expensive boat was devaluing property? What planet was she living on? "That's completely absurd," I countered, my hands clenching at my sides. "My boat is docked on my land. I pay my dues, I follow the rules. You have no authority to tell me what kind of boat I can own, especially when it's perfectly legal." She pulled out her phone, an almost triumphant look on her face. "We'll just see about that, won't we? I'm calling the association manager right now. And the towing company. We'll have that eyesore removed by the end of the day." She actually started dialing, holding the phone to her ear, staring directly at me with a triumphant, malicious grin. My jaw dropped. The towing company? For a boat on my own property? This wasn't just an annoyance anymore. This was a direct, aggressive threat. My frustration boiled over, quickly morphing into a cold, hard anger. This woman wasn't just being difficult, she was actively trying to damage my property and infringe on my rights as a homeowner. "You are not calling a towing company," I stated, each word clipped and sharp. "That boat is not going anywhere. If you try to have it towed from my private dock, that will be considered trespassing and theft, and I will press charges." She just rolled her eyes, talking into her phone. "Yes, hello, Jerry. It's Brenda from Osprey Point. Yes, I have a rather urgent situation. One of our new residents has brought in an absolutely enormous boat, completely unsuitable for the lake. It's an absolute blight. We need it removed immediately. Yes, I'm calling the tow service now, but I need you to back me up. He's being very uncooperative." She paused, listening. Then her face hardened. "What do you mean, check the bylaws?" "I am the bylaws," she hissed, her voice rising in pitch. The audacity, the sheer unmitigated gall of this woman. My mind was racing, trying to shut her down. This wasn't just about my boat anymore. This was about principle. This was about defending my property from an unhinged busybody who thought she could dictate my life. And that's when a thought, a truly delicious, vengeful thought, started to form in the back of my mind. A thought about exactly how much private this lake really was. But first, I had to deal with Brenda, the self-proclaimed HOA empress, who was now practically shouting into her phone, demanding a tow truck arrive. The drama was reaching its peak, and I knew, absolutely knew, that I had to shut this down before she did something truly stupid. The temperature had definitely risen, and not just from the sun. My anger was now a quiet, dangerous hum beneath the surface. She wanted a fight? Oh, she was about to get one, just not the one she was expecting. So I'd been watching this whole ridiculous show unfold from a distance, leaning against my truck, a smirk probably plastered all over my face. Karen, meanwhile, was practically doing an interpretive dance of pure outrage by my boat, gesticulating wildly at it, then at the tow truck driver she'd somehow managed to call out. The poor guy looked utterly confused, probably wondering why he was at a private lake property to tow a perfectly legal boat. A small crowd of her club members had gathered, most of them looking awkward, clearly not wanting to be associated with her escalating drama. They'd brought their own small boats, kayaks, paddleboards, all neatly lined up, ready for their weekly lake access meeting that she organized. "It's an eyesore, a navigational hazard," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the peaceful morning air like a rusty saw. "And it's clearly violating the HOA's size restrictions. I've already told Mr. Henderson here that if he doesn't move it, it's getting impounded." She pointed a trembling, manicured finger directly at me as if just noticing my presence, even though I'd been there for 10 minutes. I slowly pushed myself off the truck, taking my sweet time, enjoying the way her face began to contort further. "Mr. Henderson," she continued, puffing out her chest, "I've tried to be reasonable, but you simply refuse to adhere to the rules. Now the tow truck is here. Consider this your final warning. Either you move that monstrosity or it goes." I walked towards her, every step deliberate. The tow truck driver, a young guy named Mike, gave me an apologetic shrug. He clearly knew what was up. Some of the club members started whispering, probably wondering why I wasn't backing down. I stopped a few feet from her, close enough to make her tilt her head back slightly to look me in the eye. "Karen," I said, my voice calm, almost dangerously so. "Let's be very clear about a few things here." Her nostrils flared. "There's nothing unclear. You're breaking rules on our lake." "Ah, our lake," I echoed, letting the words hang in the air. "See, that's where the misunderstanding begins, and frankly, ends. This isn't your lake, Karen. This is my lake." A stunned silence fell over the small gathering. You could practically hear the gears grinding in her head, trying to process what I'd just said. Mike, the tow truck driver, subtly pulled out his phone, probably hitting record. Smart kid. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice suddenly losing some of its screech. "The HOA has an easement. We have access." "You had an easement," I corrected gently, a small smile playing on my lips. An easement I granted to the HOA years ago for specific recreational use under specific conditions. Conditions which, I might add, include respecting property owners and not harassing them over personal property that falls entirely within their property lines well outside the easement. I gestured vaguely towards my boat, still sitting peacefully on its trailer, nowhere near blocking anything. Her face was turning a shade of purple I hadn't thought possible. "That's a lie! You can't just revoke an easement! I'm on the board! I know these things!" "Oh, you absolutely can revoke an easement," I said, my smile widening now. "Especially when the terms are violated, and when the owner of the property decides he no longer wishes to extend that privilege to an organization whose primary representative spends her time making utterly false accusations and attempting to illegally tow a boat that is fully on private land under no HOA jurisdiction whatsoever." I paused, letting that sink in, then delivered the final blow. So, let me reiterate. As of right now, effective immediately, the HOA's easement to my property, this lake access point, and the use of the lake waters from this access is revoked. You and your entire club, I swept my arm to encompass the bewildered members, are no longer welcome here. Pack up your kayaks, your paddle boards, whatever approved little toys you brought. You've got 5 minutes to clear out before I call the actual authorities for trespassing. And that's when it truly began. Her eyes bugged out, her jaw went slack, then snapped shut with an audible click. A high-pitched, almost animalistic squeal tore from her throat. "You can't do that! Do you know who I am?" she shrieked, her voice bouncing off the trees, probably audible to the next county. She was flailing her arms now, like a desperate bird trying to take flight. "I am Karen Jenkins, head of the HOA Architectural Review Board. I decide what's allowed. I've invested years into this community. My family donated the clubhouse chairs." I just stood there, watching the spectacular train wreck unfold, a sense of calm washing over me. This was it, the public meltdown. The crowd of club members started backing away, some pulling out their own phones, others just staring with mortified expressions. Mike, the tow truck driver, was openly recording, a grin plastered on his face. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England, Karen," I said, cutting through her escalating wails. "This is my property, and you and your little club are trespassing. Consider this your official notice." I pulled a pre-printed, notarized letter from my back pocket and dramatically handed it to her. "It's all in writing. Sent a copy to the HOA board as well. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." She stared at the document like it was a venomous snake, then crumpled it in her hand, her face crimson. "This is an outrage! I'm going to sue you! I'm going to make sure you never have peace! I'll get your boat impounded some other way! I'll... She was practically vibrating with rage, spittle flying from her mouth. One of the club members, a nervous-looking man, finally stepped forward. "Karen, maybe we should just go." "No, we are not going anywhere. This is our lake. He's a liar, a thief, a menace," she roared, pointing at me again, her finger trembling so violently it looked like it might snap off. Her face was a patchwork of blotchy red and purple, her hair starting to come loose from her perfectly coiffed bun. It was magnificent, absolute, pure, unadulterated Karen energy. I just checked my watch. "Time's up, folks. 5 minutes gone. If anyone is still here in 60 seconds, I'm calling the sheriff, and they won't be as polite as I am." The sound of car keys jingling and hurried footsteps filled the air as the club members scrambled to grab their gear and make a hasty retreat. They were practically falling over each other to get away from Karen's rapidly unraveling sanity. She, however, remained rooted, glaring at me, breathing heavily, like a bull ready to charge. But there was no one left to rally. Her audience was gone, leaving her alone in her fury. "You haven't heard the last of this!" she screamed, her voice hoarse now, as I turned to walk back towards my truck. I just chuckled, shaking my head. Oh, I knew I hadn't. But for now, the lake was mine again, and my boat, my too big boat, was staying right where it was. So there I stood, looking at Karen, this middle-aged woman whose face was already a permanent shade of crimson, trying to process the words I just uttered. You and your entire club are hereby banned from my lake, effective immediately. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. The other club members, who'd been standing around awkwardly, suddenly looked less like her obedient disciples and more like startled deer. Karen, though, she just sputtered, like a broken sprinkler system. "Your lake?" she finally managed, her voice cracking like a dried twig. "Don't be ridiculous. This is a communal resource. We have rights. We have an agreement with the HOA. And that's when I pulled out the trump card, the thing I'd been holding on to, not because I ever expected to use it in such a dramatic fashion, but because it was simply the truth. "No, Karen," I said, as calmly as I could, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "There's no agreement with my HOA. This entire body of water, from the shoreline on this side all the way across to my property line on the far bank, has been deeded to me, privately owned, for my personal use. It's been in my family for generations. I pay taxes on it, every square inch of it." I watched her face cycle through disbelief, anger, and then a flicker of genuine fear. Her eyes darted to the other club members, who were now openly whispering amongst themselves, a slow, dawning realization spreading across their faces. You could almost hear the gears grinding in their heads. Wait, she's been telling us this was a public access lake? She promised us prime fishing spots? Karen, naturally, went for the full Karen defense. That's illegal. You can't just claim a lake. This is clearly a common area. We've been using it for years. "And now you won't," I interjected, keeping my voice firm, but trying to inject just a touch of that exhausted exasperation, because honestly, dealing with her was just so tiring. "You've been trespassing, plain and simple. I've tolerated it for a long time, assuming you were just polite neighbors enjoying the area. But when you tried to tow my boat, my property, mind you, from my property, well, that crosses a line, a very expensive, legally binding line." I then reached into my pocket and pulled out a neatly folded document. It was a copy of the deed, highlighting the specific parcel description that clearly encompassed the lake. I didn't even offer it to her. I just held it up, letting the official-looking paper speak for itself. Her eyes bugged out, scanning the text from a distance. "I'm going to need you all to pack up your gear, load up your boats, and leave. Immediately," I continued, my gaze sweeping over the group. "Any attempt to return will be considered trespassing, and I will press charges. I've already contacted local law enforcement to inform them of this decision, and to request patrols should there be any difficulties." That last part was a little white lie, but it hit harder than a truth. The mention of actual cops, of charges, sent a palpable shiver through the club. One of the younger guys, probably just a casual fisherman, visibly deflated and started packing up his tackle box. Karen, however, wasn't done. "I'm calling my lawyer! You haven't heard the last of this!" she yelled, pointing a shaky finger at me. I just gave her my most sincere, tired smile. "Karen, I have a lawyer too, and frankly, my lawyer enjoys this kind of paperwork. So feel free. But understand, the outcome won't change. The lake is mine. Your club is unwelcome. Your behavior today sealed that fate." And that was it. The air went out of her sails completely. She still looked furious, still looked ready to explode, but there was no wind to carry her. The other club members, seeing the irrefutable evidence and sensing the imminent threat of legal trouble, began to slowly, shamefacedly pack up. One guy even gave me a sheepish nod. Within an hour, the entire lakefront was clear. Their brightly colored kayaks, their pontoon, their little fishing boats, all gone. It felt like a weight had been lifted, not just from my shoulders, but from the very air around my property. The silence that returned wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. It was the sound of my lake being my lake again. I spent the rest of the day just sitting by the water, watching the sunset, a deep sense of calm washing over me. No more impromptu club meetings, no more loud chatter, no more threats about my boat being too big. Just the gentle lapping of the waves and the satisfying knowledge that sometimes, when a Karen pushes too far, justice isn't just served. It's served on your own private lake with a view. And it tastes absolutely magnificent. So, yeah, after all that, I just stood there for a minute watching them pack up. It was surreal. Karen, bless her heart, tried to save face, mumbling something about "this isn't over" as she wrangled her little posse. But you could see it in their eyes. The other members of her club, they were just deflated. They'd been riding high on her entitlement wave for so long, and then suddenly, poof, reality hit them like a rogue wave. I got to admit, watching them slowly deflate and pack up their picnic baskets, their fancy little hats, their miniature dogs yapping indignantly, it was pretty satisfying, like deflating a hot air balloon full of self-importance. A slow hiss, then a sad, limp pile of fabric. They even left some of their trash behind, which, of course, I had to pick up, because my lake. For a couple of days after, I fully expected some kind of retaliation. A strongly worded letter from her lawyer, perhaps, a new city ordinance about boat size that somehow only applied to my boat, but nothing. Crickets. It was almost more unsettling than the confrontation itself. The calm after the storm, except the storm was a middle-aged woman yelling about my boat. Then I started hearing things through the grapevine. Turns out Karen's club quietly dissolved. Apparently, without access to my prime lakefront property, their weekly tea and pontoon gatherings weren't quite the same. Who knew my lake was the sole reason for their existence? I guess it just wasn't as much fun when they couldn't lord their supposed superiority over anyone. Part of me felt a little, weird about it. Like, did I really just dismantle an entire social club because someone tried to tow my boat? The answer, of course, is yes. Yes, I did. And honestly, no regrets. It was never about the club. It was about her audacity, her entitlement, the sheer unmitigated gall of someone to come onto my property, dictate what I can or cannot do with my possessions, and then try to enforce rules that don't even exist. The whole thing still makes me shake my head. I mean, who wakes up in the morning and thinks, today's the day I'm going to ruin someone's peace and quiet over the size of their boat on a lake I don't even own? It's just exhausting to think about. That level of self-absorption must be tiring. I'm tired just recounting it. But now, the lake is peaceful again. My boat is exactly where it always was, exactly the size it always has been. And when I go out there, I can just enjoy the water, the quiet, the sun. No more judging stares, no more whispers, no more passive-aggressive glares from a gaggle of women in sun hats. Just me, my boat, and my lake. And honestly, that peace? Priceless. It was worth every single exasperated breath, every moment of disbelief. Because sometimes you just have to remind people whose lake it actually is. I still occasionally catch myself looking out at the lake, just expecting to see a fleet of mini pontoons and pastel-colored umbrellas. But nope, just the wind, the water, and maybe a few ducks. It's almost too quiet now, which is a problem I'm perfectly happy to have. It's a weird kind of victory, really. Not a grand epic battle, but more like winning a very long, very drawn-out argument with a brick wall. And honestly, the best part? Knowing she's out there somewhere, stewing, probably trying to find a new lake to clubify. Good luck with that, Karen. My lake is off limits.